Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Today on the podcast, my guest is Ed Brzychcy. Ed is a combat veteran, business leader, author, and podcast host. He knows what it means to lead in a crisis. Ed and I discuss the difference between normal day-to-day leadership and crisis leadership. We also discuss his new books, which focus on daily leadership reflections. So, are you ready to dive in? Let's get started.
Welcome to Deep Leadership. Leadership is a people business. That's the philosophy of your podcast host, John Rennie. As a former Cold War submarine officer who spent 20 plus years leading businesses in corporate America before starting his own manufacturing business, he knows that leadership matters. Are you ready for some real-world actionable advice from John as well as his expert guests?
I'm ready.
The show starts right now.
Welcome to episode 17 of the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Ed Brzychcy. Ed is a former U.S. Army combat veteran and founder of Blue Cord Management. Blue Cord Management provides leadership development, coaching, training, and consulting services. Their mission is to transform good management into visionary leadership. Ed also hosts the Leadership Update Brief podcast, of which I was a guest last year, and he recently wrote two books. Daily Leadership Reflections, a guided journal for new leaders, and Daily Leadership Reflections, a guided journal for experienced leaders. So I'm excited to have him on the show today to talk about leadership in general and these two excellent resources. So Ed, welcome.
John, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So tell us about your military experience and how that created such a strong leadership foundation in you for, going forward and now leading Blue Cord Management.
John, I think for a lot of us going in the military is you never really know what to expect. I was that 18-year-old kid, and military was probably the best option for me. And after getting, a couple boots up my fourth point of contact and putting my head on straight, you realize just what a phenomenal impact that the NCOs have on the enlisted men and what kind of a culture that builds and what kind of collaborative teams that builds. And so after my service was over and after I earned my retirement, it's turned into, okay, how do we continue that legacy? Because training, leading, developing soldiers was a passion of mine. So you get to looking at corporate America, and I'm like sitting in a couple classes at school, and I'm doing some internships and going around to various companies. I'm like, wow, these guys, they have no idea what that culture is and what kind of an advantage that can bring into an organization. And after I finished the MBA, I looked around at the consulting industry and decided, I'm going to put my flag in the sand and go for it myself, and kicked off Blue Cord.
That's phenomenal. I mean, it's really good to see that you're taking those, the lessons that you learn in the military and then bringing them to the corporate world. So tell us a little bit about Blue Cord Management. What are your primary objectives? Who are the customers you're providing support to? And by the way, tell us what Blue Cord means.
So for first, the story of the Blue Cord is I was an infantryman, and on our dress blues we had the Blue Cord designated our profession within the infantry as infantry. And so that was my way of carrying that forward.
Okay.
And it was the legacy of the NCOs that I had. I had some amazing leaders that left a big mark on me and my leadership style when I was in those similar roles. And you just want to continue that. So for Blue Cord, it's the story of every startup. It's you kick it off, you kind of know what you want to do, and that first year I call my learning cliff. Coming out with an MBA is one thing. Learning how to do all the nitty-gritty tactical stuff that I can write a good strategic plan for was something else completely. And we went from working with organizations, and year one was a lot of, hey, how can I help you with leadership? What are some of your problems? And doing a lot of one-off seminars, a few coachings here and there. Year two, we took all of that knowledge and really in a nice iterative process built out the first, what's now level one of our training program. And for new leaders, I was looking at what do new leaders need to know? And so started seeing the commonalities from the 30-something seminars I did in my first year, pulled out the big nuggets, the common questions, made that level 1. About 9 months running that with clientele turned into, okay, this is great for new leaders, but for senior leaders, this is a little bit too easy. And for executive, it's completely irrelevant.
Right.
So in our second year, we put out level 2 and level 3. For senior leaders, we do deeper dives into a lot better decision-making and knowledge of helping people with career progressions and team building on a much more macro level.
Nice.
And then executives, we focus on a lot of cultural creation, executive impact on the organization. That went great through last year. And so this year I was looking, as I start to work with some larger clientele, and I'm now working with mostly middle market sized companies, data drives everything. And being a training company is nice, but it's a horribly crowded market. There's a lot of just competition that I didn't want to play in the sandbox. I wanted to go into consulting.
Right.
And so I took the training company, and very fortuitously in January, we digitalized the whole thing.
Nice.
And it is now, we have all 26 modules of the training online. We roll through them on a 12-week basis, which is really exciting to have that in place. And then I've started introducing some new consultative products where we're able to take a look at doing a deeper dive into the informal networks of an organization. We have
that's important.
A couple surveys that we've crafted that from the outputs of that, we craft a sociograph of, we're looking at influencers, we're looking at stratification, we're looking at siloing, and we have a really powerful visualization for all this.
Nice.
So we've introduced that here in the last 2 months, and with current clients, the beta tests are going phenomenal. We're seeing some great results, and we're crafting the stories behind all those anecdotes of, yeah, Bob's our go-to guy, or Sally takes her team and she really stands on her own. We can visualize that now for organizations, which is truly, truly exciting.
Nice. No, that's really important, because I know I've sat through I did 22 years in corporate life. So I've sat through a lot of sessions where we discussed people, and we never had anything visual to talk through. And so it was always just everybody's opinions, and, we didn't make much progress in those sessions, but having it visual is probably very powerful.
It's been incredibly powerful, and it adds a very qualitative element to the data and to the stories, because it's something, when you look at organizational relationships, it's so anecdotal. It's so, second story and almost hearsay to a point. Being able to quantify that, look at it, run some positive metrics on it, and then show a before and after when we run people through the training, or when we have some coaching sessions that are directed by what we see, it helps so much to make the changes that we need to make in an organization to build up that core leadership.
That's fantastic. That's good. I mean, I'm really glad to hear that, because I think it's important. As you're trying to develop new leaders in an organization and trying to establish the right relationships in a business and move a business forward. I think these are the kind of tools that really help leaders to see what's going on in the organization. So that's really powerful. So that's really good to hear. And I think one of the things that I was excited about, and I think it's sort of I don't know if it was an add-on or a plug-in or a result of the work that you're doing, is the 2 books that you've got out now. And they're called the Daily Leadership Reflection books. And one is for the first one was for new leaders, and now it's come out for experienced leaders. And I actually went through the entire New Leaders book right after it came out, and I loved it. I love the idea, I love the concept, and I write about a lot in my writing about the first 100 days, how important they are. And what I liked in your book is you're laying out what you should be talking and thinking about every day on that leadership journey. So why did you write these books? What's your hopes with getting these books out there?
It's one of those, I've always wanted to write a book.
Okay.
I do a lot of blogs. I do a lot of podcasting. I create a lot of content, and just to physically create something of that nature was just, okay, let's keep going with this. And so for the Daily Leadership Reflections, it's sort of the entry level into the training programs. The Daily Leadership Reflections for New Leaders is a mirror of a lot of the concepts that we address in our level 1 training program. And when it was purely corporate based, when we're doing it in corporate classrooms, it wasn't as accessible for people. But it's like you said, it's important information for people to know. And those first 30 days when you're in a new leadership position, they're make or break for a lot of people's careers, not just the new leaders, but also their team members.
Yes,
so we want to have things done right. And so putting that out there just to have as a resource for people, just to have as an aid, they don't have to come through the entire training program, but they can at least be exposed to some of these ideas and concepts, many of which they might not have ever even thought of before. Continuing that, when that one was released, we immediately jumped into book 2, which is, again, a mirror of our level 2 program. So we started to dive into some deeper concepts and decision-making, cognitive awareness of biases and heuristics, understanding roles in organizations, and a little bit more of a strategic picture for growth so that you can better craft what your team is doing between their inputs and their outputs. And from that realm, it's really a refresher course. So if you're a seasoned leader, you've been around for a while, but you want some new ideas, that's about. Really exciting to say that right now we're working on the next 2 books for that.
I figured as much. I figured that wasn't going to be the end of it.
Yeah, no, we've got a series. So right now I'm incredibly passionate about entrepreneurship. So I'm working on daily leadership reflections for entrepreneurs. So for startups in those first 30 days, what are the key things you got to do that? And then the next book will be a mirror of our executive programming. Focusing on, for executives, a resource where they can think about, okay, what kind of an impact do I have in my organization? What kind of culture do I want to craft? And what does that entail? How do I make sure my managers are making sound, responsible decisions? And we're putting some just mental exercises in place to help people with that.
That's fantastic. And, the one thing I took away from the guide for new leaders is that, I could literally give this book to a new leader without any knowledge of blue cord management. And it would be a really good resource for them to just think about what they're doing every day through that first. I think you have it 90 days, if I'm not mistaken.
It's for 30 days. First
30 days. Okay.
Yep.
So so the first 30 days. And then of course I'm always talking about the first 100 days, but I think, those first 30 days, just you have a daily activity every day. And I really like that. So I really like the way that's laid out. And like I said, if I have a new leader coming into an organization, that's something I can just give them right away and say, follow this guide. It'll help you along your journey. And so I think the same thing with the experienced leader. I think that'll be a great resource as well. So.
Yeah. And that's what they're meant for. It's the mental exercises. They're 5-10 minutes, or they can be all day. I mean, if you really want to dwell on it,
right.
But it's something that just to get those gears turning and expose people to some ideas that they might not have thought of, or that have slipped through the cracks, or maybe it was just something they never were able to articulate before. They're like, oh, wait a minute. That's.
Yeah, no, they're really good. And a lot of your leadership concepts in the book were very similar to the way my thinking is about people and how you should be leading people. So I think there are a lot of gems in that book. And so I really thought it was well done. So I was excited when I saw the second book come out, and I guess I figured it would be part of a series. So
yeah, so it's a cool little passion project of mine now. It's exciting to see the different stages in the growth in there.
That's
I have no idea what I'm going to do after these 4. I'll find another one. Maybe
I'm sure once you get the
members
bug
or something of that.
Right,
Once you get the bug,
you're gonna keep going. Exactly. Well, very good. So one of the things I listen to your podcast all the time. I've subscribed because I think it's always very valuable, and a lot of good insight for me as a business leader. So lately, not the last. I guess it was the last episode. You addressed the issue of COVID-19 and. The fact that leaders are kind of in a situation now where they're in a bit of an unknown, right? The business world has changed almost overnight. So talk a little bit about why leadership is so critical right now in this pandemic that we have.
Oh, I mean, in this current environment, this is an unprecedented situation that none of us saw coming. Your military, I don't know what the naval equivalent for PACE planning is, but primary alternate contingency emergency. This is somewhere QRS for this situation. Right. So, and that for leaders that's where we have to shine. So when the trains are running on time, when things are clicking away the way they're supposed to, a good manager is more than sufficient because we're just monitoring the Gantt charts, making sure people are accomplishing what they need to accomplish and managing time and resources. When the world gets upended and just the unexpected happens, that's when leaders have to rise up. That's where tough decisions have to be made. Tough calls have to be addressed. Situations with often difficult perspectives have to be looked at. And the ultimate decision to what do we do moving forward with this for the good of all is incredibly, incredibly hard. So making those tough decisions, you absolutely have to have somebody who's a leader. You can't just have somebody who's willing to keep the trains running on time, because that train derailed a while back. You got to figure out what's next, and you have to do it quickly and decisively.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Deep Leadership is brought to you by Strikeforce Energy. Strikeforce Energy is a veteran-owned company founded by a Navy SEAL, and their products are all made in the USA. Strikeforce Energy is a liquid flavor pack that you can add into any beverage. It has 0 calories, 0 carbs, and 0 sugar. Each pack contains 80 milligrams of caffeine. Strikeforce Energy is offering a discount to all the listeners of Deep Leadership. Go to strikeforceenergy.com and enter the discount code I have the watch, one word, for a 20% discount on every order. Deep Leadership is also brought to you by my Amazon best-selling book, I Have the Watch, Becoming a Leader Worth Following. This book is filled with 23 short stories on how you can become a more effective leader. It's super easy to read, and most people finish it in less than 2 hours. Go to ihavethewatch.com and click the large orange button for signed copies. Enter the discount code I Have the Watch, one word, at checkout for 20% off your order, and domestic shipping is always free. Yeah, it's almost like, in the Navy terminology, when the seas are easy, right? Gentle seas, anybody can, sail a ship. Anybody can guide a ship through the ocean, right? But when it's heavy seas and you have a lot of storms, you want your most experienced sailor, experienced leader at the helm. And the other thing is that all the sailors are looking to that experienced captain to lead them through this crisis, right? So I think people are looking for the shelter in the storm. They're looking for the lighthouse. They're looking for you to be a guide to them as to, because they're thinking, what's going to happen? What's going to happen next, right? And so I think leaders, this is where you get paid the big bucks, right?
Yeah,
if you have to lead in these tough situations. Yeah.
This is where you earn those big bucks, because it's, people, your team members, they're used to the 9 to 5. They're used to their jobs, their roles in the organization. They're not thinking strategically. They're thinking, okay, tactically, all of our tactics, everything that we've done before is completely upended. Now what? Right. And if you're at the helm and you're looking afraid and you can't make a decision, how do you think they feel?
Right.
And it's absolutely terrifying for them. So if you want to steer your people safe into the storm, into safe harbor, you're going to have to, pull a few threads, and you're going to have to pull at the lines in new ways and divine through a difficult course, but you're going to get them there. Right, and that's what you've got to be able to provide. And it doesn't matter. I mean, the wrong decision is still a decision. It's that inaction and that freezing. That's what truly terrifies people and sets them apart. Or making a half a decision and, we'll just wait and see. We'll try this for a little bit and hopefully that'll work. I mean, hope's not a strategy. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And I think we all, one of the things that we're faced with right now is change, right? There is whatever comfort zone we were in just 3 weeks ago is completely gone. And we're in this, a new world. I mean, you're seeing, people working from home. You're seeing, teachers teaching remotely. You're seeing, just everything is kind of turned upside. Restaurants are closed. People are laid off. The service industry is almost gone
crushed
now.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of unknowns. And I think anytime you deal with change as a leader, it's difficult. But when your the underlying foundation is completely removed, I think this is when people look to their leaders, right? I mean, to guide us through this change, right?
Exactly. It's catastrophic. And there's a lot of interesting facets to this change, because this is something that it's an external force. I mean, we have COVID, it's a virus, but it's going to pass.
Hmm.
And so, yes, we're going to have a lot of short-term disruptions because we need to socially isolate. We need to make sure we're staying safe, that we're not, contaminating people, especially the more vulnerable populations. So, and then even if we do get sick, we don't want so many people sick at once where it overwhelms the healthcare system. So, okay, we're going to have to take some short-term measures, and it's really going to upend things.
Right.
But what's going to happen is, okay, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, whenever this thing starts to fade, what's next? And that for leadership now is a really tough discussion. I've had a lot of conversations about that with people who've had to lay off employees. Okay, what's your rehiring plan? What is that next step going to look like?
Right.
Or for the meantime, while your people are, furloughed, or are you still keeping in touch with them to maintain that relationship so that when you call them back up, say, hey, we want you to come back to work, they don't go, yeah, I have the opportunity. I think I'm going to look for some other opportunities.
Yeah.
And so you start planning ahead, and you make sure that, yes, we have all of the measures in place to deal with everything we need to deal with now, but we're still focusing 2 and 3 steps ahead. We're not, this is taken care of. The immediate situation is kind of rough, but it's okay. Now, when we start going back to continue with the naval analogies, when we start going back into the harbor and we start offloading the ship and this is all done, what's the plan? What's it going to look like?
Right.
I personally, for me, my perspective, I think this is the perfect petri dish for all this technology, where suddenly we're going to see a lot more remote work opportunities, where we're going to see employees going, you had me working remotely for the last 2 months and I kind of like it. I got used to it. Can I keep doing that? And a lot of bosses and a lot of organizations that might have been dragging their feet before are going to go, I can look at your numbers. You were productive. You got the job done. So we're going to start to see some of those shifts in the workplace.
Yeah. So what your point is that we may not go back to what we were 3 weeks ago, right?
We absolutely may not.
This has moved the needle somewhat towards things like remote work and this sort of digital connection to everybody. And no, I think you're right. I think it's going to move in that direction.
It's going to be really fascinating to see in the next 2 to 3 years how this changes the way we do business. I agree. When we start looking at organizations and organizational change, when we have that large major upset, right now is the time where we see the greatest innovations, because we're trying to figure out how to do things better,
right?
How to deal with the crisis that's in front of us. And we're learning a lot of valuable lessons.
Yeah.
So which of those lessons do we keep? And do we continue to espouse as we move forward? There's a lot of interesting ideas that are going to come out of all this. I mean, Zoom, we're using that for this conversation right now.
Oh, I know.
Their sysadmin right now is got to be I don't know what's going on in his mind, but
can you imagine that? Can you imagine working at Zoom right now when you're
working at Zoom and being the sysadmin and being the guy who's responsible for all these servers, who's just completely spiked.
Yeah.
And knowing that this tool is just as useful, as powerful, and as everything else.
Yeah.
And seeing some of my friends, they're having Thirsty Thursdays online with one another and having cocktail parties.
I've been having happy hours. Yeah. Just like this. It's really interesting. So it's interesting.
Cool.
I do a morning meeting with all my employees at the manufacturing business I run. And we actually had a long talk about this morning. And I said, business is not going to be the same going forward. But I said, I don't know what it's going to look like. I've got a lot. I said, I've been thinking about a lot of questions, but I don't have a lot of answers just yet. And I told them as they were working today to start thinking about what are the things that our industry needs right now and that we are uniquely qualified to do. And so, I don't have the answers yet, but I've got some really good questions. And I think one of the things I like to try to do in leadership is to try to use the collective wisdom of the team to be able to try to solve problems. Because right now, I don't have the answers.
Yeah.
I might be the leader. I might have a CEO title, but I don't have the answers. I've been doing this for 30 years, leading people, but I don't have the answers right now. I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime. So I think we as leaders have to really depend on our our experienced teams to start thinking outside the box. Literally, there is no box.
Exactly. So, the box is gone.
It's completely gone. Yeah. So I think it's a really unique time right now. So,
and that's something with that story, John. I love that because that's the humility that leadership has to have. Is we don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
But we say, hey, here's the questions we have. What do you guys think? And soliciting those answers and crowdsourcing it out a little bit because, hey, your manufacturing line are still the guys who are in the trenches. They know, they see, and they're doing. So by all means, that collective wisdom is a powerful piece of an organization.
Well, and I see there's opportunities too, right? Like the competitive landscape just shifted, like completely shifted.
Oh, yeah.
So, the players in the competitive landscape, they were all kind of set and they were all in their right positions, right? But that was before this pandemic, right? Now you've got a complete shakeup of the world, right? So who's gonna be the next, big player? Is it the one that's, being the most innovative, the one that's going to come up with, the best answers? It's going to be the one that's the most flexible or quickest to market with different opportunities. So I think it's an opportunity for smaller companies like myself to take advantage of the, like a complete shift in the market. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, there's a huge opportunity, and because with the traditional markets, we're going to see that shift. And if we're using our time wisely right now, we're going to define what it looks like when we come out of this. Because
right.
Like I said, we know this is temporary. We know that it's a big outside force that is eventually going to go away.
Yeah.
So it's not like 10 years ago in 2008 where it was a foundational problem.
Yeah.
This is something that the foundation is still secure once we go back to business as usual, but the pieces are all going to be all over the place. So regathering them back together and reforming the economy, the market chains, the industries, it's going to be an incredible dynamic. And it's like going to be that set of Legos that you break apart and we get to rebuild almost.
And it may look different. Yeah. When it's done. Yeah, exactly. So very cool. So one thing I've been writing on Twitter, I'm connected to a lot of veterans online. And I put a tweet the other day and I said, I love watching veterans during crisis like this because they all have a little smirk on they're all kind of got a little smile on their face. And they've kind of like, maybe there's a little bit of like, okay, I've seen worse.
Yeah.
So to explain maybe a little bit about, what your observations have been with like between, military leadership, veterans in the business, and maybe just sort of guys who hadn't been through that, that past experience.
I mean, the military is a crucible.
Yeah.
And you always come out of
that before.
When you come out of those crucibles, you're changed. I can never have a bad day. There's not mortars falling around me. I'm not driving down a road next to an IED or anything like, so I can never really have a bad day.
Yes.
So you keep those experiences as relative as possible. And you just understand that this is something that, I've put years of my life on pause before, as of you. I mean, when you go out of the boat, when you find yourself in the sandbox, you're mission focused, you're okay. It's rough right now, but we have a job to do. Let's get it done.
Right.
And you just carry forward with that. You learn how to flex that muscle. That's something that for a lot of people in the civilian workforce who do or who don't have military experience, they've never had to endure that. They've never been through those crucibles. And so this is their crucible.
Right. Yeah, and I think I think veterans and guys that have had some military experience, they can help their civilian colleagues, and I think that we can help them and basically talk to them about what got us through our tough times when we were in the military, right? I think we can be. I think that's an additive for military leaders in the civilian world, so we have that perspective, right? It could be a lot worse, right? We've been in that a lot worse before,
Yeah. And it's the things that got us through is it's a shared hardship. I mean, we all, we're sitting on the fob in Iraq and we're all in the same boat. We're all 20 of us are living in the same stinking tent, which quite literally is awful. 20 infantrymen in a tent is not pretty.
Yeah.
It's, so you can laugh about it. You can joke about it. It's something that you're already in together. And then the second side of that is the strong leadership piece. It's you have people that you trust who are, I mean, it might not, you're far enough removed from this strategic decision making, like, okay, great. I don't know what General McChrystal is thinking right now, but that's cool because I'm concentrating right now on me and my team and my squad. And I trust my platoon sergeant. And that's what matters. And having that decisive element, at least locally, helps out a lot.
It does. And I think you said this on one of your podcasts. One of the things in the military is, it was the person to your left and the person to your right. That's what you cared about. That's what you were focused on. And I think in the tough times that we're dealing with, I think it's the same thing, right? It's the person to your right. It's the person to your left. It's taking care of your team and helping them through this tough time as well, and being there for your people and standing up together. And I know in my past experience, when I've gone through tough times with the business, I've always built deeper relationships with the people that went through those tough times together, that I went through those tough times together with. So I think these are good times in that you really build, first of all, it tests your leadership skills, right? I mean, but it also, you build these tight relationships with people that you go through these tough times together.
Oh, there's going to be some incredible bonds coming out of this. And all of us are going to, in spring of 2021, we're going to be looking back and that memory is going to pop up on Facebook and go, oh yeah, that kind of sucked.
Oh yeah, that's right. Look, there's me with a mask on.
So but that's sort of the nature of these crucibles that we go through is they shape us, they form us. They form incredibly strong partnerships with the people that we share the hardships with. And when we get through, we realize that we can. When we're on the onset or when in the midst of it, it sucks. But when we're on the outside of it and we've gone through it, it's very easy to look back and go, we did that.
You appreciate the good times so much better when you've been through the bad times. You have to have that darkness to see the light, right?
You do.
Yeah, excellent. No, that's really good. I really like that because I'm glad you're talking about it on your podcast because I think it's really important that leaders really need to step up right now and be that sort of shelter in the storm is what I like to say. So I think that's really important. So you've written a book on it. So I'm going to ask you this question. So what kind of advice would you give to new leaders getting started in a leadership role? Say they just got, they've got responsibility now for a small team and it's their first leadership assignment. What are some words of advice to give to new leaders that are coming into a role like that?
Be a sponge. There's so much information out there. Absorb as much of it as you can. Make the best decisions that you can, and don't be afraid to ask for advice. Don't assume that because somebody trusted you in a leadership position that you know everything now. You quite honestly really don't. So don't be afraid to find that good mentor, find a good coach, find people who you know are going to give you some straight answers and help you through making the tough choices that you're going to have to make here in the near future.
That's great. I like it. I recently interviewed one of the first female submarine officers, and that's exactly what she said. She said, "Be a sponge." Same words. That's why I smiled when you said that. So I think it's really good.
It's great military advice. I know.
Be a sponge. Soak it up. Listen. Observe.
Exactly.
Ask questions. Yeah, exactly. So that's really good. Don't think you know all the answers because you probably don't. So I'm still struggling to find the answers 30 years into leadership.
We all are. I mean, and that's a good humble side of leadership is we know we don't know everything and we're just constantly intellectually curious to find out what's next.
Yeah. No, that's great. Outstanding. So I've been asking all of my guests this, and so I'll get your opinion on this. What are some characteristics of a great leader?
Humility, inquisitiveness. There's so many characteristics, but I think the big thing is it's confidence for leaders. And it's not a abrasive sort of confidence. It's not a cockiness. It's that quiet professional competence that leads to a strong just demeanor and confidence. And being able just to, even when you are in the storm, you don't know what's going on, being able to say, I have the resources to go to get me through this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I've been talking with somebody here locally in Raleigh about this, so the question is during crisis management, right? You mentioned it, and I think it's important, is you you have to be confident, right? And you don't want to panic because, if you panic, your team's going to panic, right? But I think the other side of it is that you have to show a level of humanity, and you mentioned humility, but just saying, being honest and transparent, saying, I don't have the answers here, but here's what we're going to do, So I think there's a little balance being made by leaders in this time, right? So you don't want to be cocky, like I got all the answers. I've got this. Don't worry about it.
No,
but you have to be confident. You have to be confident, but I think you have to show your humanity as well, and be very empathetic to the struggles that people are going through right now. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And it's the kind of confidence that it's a quiet competence. It's and I got asked very early on in one of my early seminars, well, how do I appear more confident as a leader? And it took me a while to find the best answer for that. I don't remember the way I answered it back then, but it wasn't as good as I feel I can answer it now, which is it's the secure knowledge in what your abilities are. And it's a good self-awareness of here's the answers I have, here's the answers I don't have, and here's where I go to find out the stuff to fill those gaps for the answers that I don't have. That's how you cultivate that confidence, is really being secure in your knowledge base.
Wow, that's good stuff. Really good. So leaders, are you listening to that? That's some really good advice by Ed right there. So really powerful. Thank you. So Ed, how can people connect with you, find out more about Blue Cord Management, find out about your books, your podcast? What's the best way to find these resources? Oh,
there's a ton of great resources to look me up online. By all means, my website is www.bluecordmgmt.com. And I'm on social media, Twitter and Facebook at BlueCordMGMT. Those are the easiest ways to get a hold of me. Feel free to shoot me a direct message, or there's a contact form on the website that'll send me an email.
And your podcast is called?
And my podcast is the Leadership Update Brief. You can see the links on bluecordmanagement.com, as well as it's available on Apple, on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and all the top podcast services.
Great. Fantastic. Now, and I'll put all of these links in the show notes for this episode, so you'll be able to find Ed easily. So, Ed, this has been really helpful and really insightful. So I really appreciate your time. And again, I encourage everyone who's listening to this podcast to listen to Ed's podcast, because I think you're going to get so much out of his knowledge, his experience. He brings that, that leadership experience he had from the military, he brings it into business, and he gives you a lot of really good practical ways to be a great leader. So I highly encourage you to look up Ed and to listen to what he's got to say, because we just scratched the surface in this short half hour, but Ed's got a lot more to say. So thank you, Ed. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you, John. It's great to be here.
Okay. Well, that's it for today. So thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.
Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and updates, please visit our website at www.deepleadershippodcast.com or johnsrennie.com. Until next time, take care.